So let's settle down now. One of the things I find in the news that's coming through, we've got a few little digressions tonight. Unfortunately, I'm not as on tip-top form because of, well, you know why.
I wasn't holding it, I just got it.
One of the things that disturbs me very greatly is the confusion of a very fundamental distinction which we insist on in the science of ethics. The distinction between the arbitrary and the natural. What comes from will and what comes from nature. Nature, of course, is discovered by reason, so it's a conflict of the will and the intellect, if you like, in a way. But what comes from the will, the arbitrary things that people hold are extremely difficult today to see. It's difficult to watch, let me put it that way. It's difficult to see these things being put over us. For instance, marriage. I think I mentioned to you a scientist that was driving me in her car said, marriage is what you want to make it. Yeah, well, I wonder if you jump off a cliff, gravity is what you make it. You see, some things belong to man by nature, and it's natural for male and female to constitute the family. How do you know that? You measure by the end. Remember, all practical matters are judged by the end. What's the end for which marriage exists? Reproduction of the species. There are several benefits. One is mutual aid. Another one is, and this is the supreme one, reproduction of the species. And common sense will tell us this. And it's been established by mankind from time immemorial. Male, female. But two men, what's the end for which that is? That's the point I want to come to tonight. That they assume that love is the purpose of marriage. That's a means to marriage. That's not that's not the ultimate purpose. The purpose is the reproduction of the species. And that's why the state should be protecting the family, the familial society, as we call it. Should be protecting it from these people who want to make it just an arbitrary thing. Channel 4 this afternoon in the news, this evening in the news, said something like this. We don't take sides, that's not our job. We just report the news as it is. Immediately, yes, I laughed too. Immediately they said that, they put the advertising on, which has been going day and night on Channel 4, for, how does it go again? Man and a woman saying, we had our chance, but our son doesn't get his chance. He wants to marry his buddy, Johnny. Wants to have his opportunity. He doesn't have the same rights as we have. Now, they're assuming that what they want is a right. Remember that? We said that before. It's an arbitrary thing according to them. Well, I told you what I said to a student one day, didn't I? Two girls met them. One said, I want you to meet my friend. I said, how do you do? And I said, what are you studying? She said, oh, I'm studying so-and-so, the rights of such-and-so, whatever it was, I've forgotten now. I said, right? What's the right? What I want. Well, if that lad over there wants to rape you, he's got a right. Is that what you're telling me? The other girl said, you did say that, she said to her girlfriend. But that's what's coming through in the news all the time, that a right is what you want. They don't use those specific words, but it's presumed. It's my right for this, my right for that. When I ask students what is a right, they don't know. A right is a moral power over others to allow you to carry out your obligations. So rights presume obligations. So first, I grew up hearing this from holy name societies and things like that. I heard this sort of thing. Oh, don't forget you've got obligations too. That's badly expressed. You have first an obligation. That then allows you to have a right. If Bob and Mary have children, they have an obligation to educate those children. That gives them a right now, a moral power over others. Keep your cotton-picking hands off my kids, or my money that I need for this. Like that terrible injustice that Americans seem to be doing nothing about. Australia's way ahead of it on this. Namely, we have St. Peter's School here, and the people of this district myself included, we are paying for Newport and we're paying for the Catholic school as well. And then there's another school, I've forgotten the name of it for a minute, St. Peter's, I think it's a Lutheran school, isn't it, down the road? So those poor devils are doing the same. The parents are paying for Newport through their taxes, and the tax is something like, I think they hit me for $1,500 this year. And that's a special concession, by the way, something the government's doing, I don't know what it was now, the name of it. But in any case, then the same parents have to pay not only for that, but have to pay for their children to go to these schools, St. Peter's Catholic School or St. Peter's Lutheran School. And that's a terrible injustice. That's, shall we call it, political theft by stealing from Catholic parents. In Australia, they get vouchers and they're allowed to use that. As a matter of fact, some people are getting the vouchers and going to Catholic schools. In fact, I think they said something like 25% of non-Catholics are in Catholic schools. But any private schools, parents have the right to educate the children. There's some beautiful works written on that. I shouldn't say that because I wrote one of them, but just realised what I'd said. But Father Woodbury wrote one. I'm going to show it to Mr. Venari and consult him about possible publication, in which he wrote 3 essays that have never been published, and they're beautiful. Absolutely tie it down. that parents have the right to educate their children at home or in their own schools. So keep that in mind, my friend. Now, another offshoot of this confusion of the rational with the arbitrary, the natural with the arbitrary, if you like, is this, that they're saying that love is the purpose of marriage. Now, this is what you get. I've got charts on there for you. You've got love, or you've got children. They put them on an equal basis. In fact, they're assuming that that's the real reason for marriage. I'm hearing that day after day now on television, in the news. It comes out somewhere. All right, then this is not of the essence of marriage. So what's wrong with homosexuality then? You and I know it's absurd. I think the, Conservative Police Organisation published a paper I wrote on that, it was in the Social Justice Review, on the absurdity of homosexual marriage years ago. I wrote that. But it makes sense if we just assume that it comes from what you want, that you've got a right to marry somebody simply because you love them. That's not the essence of marriage. So I know that a lot of you have not studied ethics yet, and that's why I want to emphasize some of these things. There are a few ethical points I want to develop out of this, that man is together an individual and a person. But as a person, it rises him above the whole universe. Professor Haldane, years ago, thought it was absurd, the whole idea of a God looking at the human race. This little thing called man, look at the vast universe. You trying to tell me this thing called man is important? He was thinking in terms spatially, quantitatively, as perhaps a scientist he should, but certainly not in the manner in which he uttered this. I have this in a book that I bought 100 years ago. It was 105 years ago, pardon me. I should correct my own errors. And the question he overlooked was this, that substantially, according to his construction, substantially, man is one little child. I think this was John Paul II said this not long before he died. That one little child is greater in worth than the whole universe. One little child. But that's why I always think of the time living in Montreal where there was something came over the news. Keep Côte Sainte Catherine, keep this highway clear, please. Police are trying to get through. They had police and they had helicopters. One little baby. What do we do? I mentioned this before. What do we do on the farm, St. Michael's Orphanage, when that idiot creased the skull of a bull calf? What do we do? Shoot it. We didn't call for an ambulance, etc. because we have an implicit grasp of this, that one human person is of greater value than all the bull calves in the world. So, my friends, it's important, this idea of man being a person based upon the spiritual soul. He's an individual based upon the matter. Remember that. Never forget that. And there's a beautiful essay by Father Woodbury that I'm going to let you have somehow. I'm not sure how. I think I worked it into the ethics course. And it lays it all out, the consequences of that. And how does a government then have a right to make laws today which govern people tomorrow? In other words, in 100 years' time, how does a government have the right to make laws? Because the laws come from nature, not just from man's arbitrary will. So we have a lot to say about those things, especially when we come to ethics. Remember that distinction between the arbitrary and the natural. But that is why this scourge of homosexuality is in the world. Because of the failure to grasp this, and the presumption that man is all there is, as the secular humanists say, man is all there is. And by the way, while living in Ottawa, I spoke about 7 times, I think, on this problem, the consequences of secular humanism. Man is all there is, says one work on secular humanism. And all the things, all the errors, we would regard them as, mentioned in this book in England, it's just called Humanism. H.J. Blackham, that's it, Blackham is his name. It's a very hard to get hold of book. I have a Xerox copy of it. And there is a 7-point program. And homosexuality is one of them. Drugs is another. Divorce is another. Easy divorce, etc., etc., etc. And everything that was in that book, and I can't remember the date of it, but it was somewhere in the 70s, I think. No, it might be even before that. And in everything in that book, we've got now. It's all based upon the confusions, the basic confusions in philosophy. If the new people I see here tonight will forgive me where for a number of reasons, I'm not sticking to the text which we use for the moment. I've been working till 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's unfortunately having an effect on my time and work. But now one of the things I was going to speak about, I gave a lecture in Australia, when was I there? 18 months ago. And I spoke about some of this stuff to a group. And a little paper I gave my students, The New False Sexual Ethics. You will all get it in due course. But it separates sexuality from the reproduction of the species. It separates them. And all sexual practices become morally legitimate because it depends upon will. For instance, masturbation, contraception, premarital and extramarital sex. It might shock you to know that a student thought when I said extramarital sex is you get extra sex when you're married. That was a girl, by the way. So, artificial insemination by husband or by donor, all these, I've brought out the logic of that. Abortion, focusing on the humanity of the fetus as if that were the only criterion. The humanity of the fetus is a secondary argument. The primary argument is the end of sexuality. Pro-life people have wasted time over the years in giving the enemy an opportunity by speaking about the humanity of the fetus. It's a true argument. It's not a false argument, but it misses the point. If you argue from the end, as we ought to in practical matters, reproduction of the species, anything which exercises the function and rejects the end is automatically throwing away a greater good for a lesser. So it's never lawful to act for pleasure alone, is the way Woodbury put it. You can't reject the end for the sake of pleasure, simply for the sake of pleasure. If that argument had been put forward solidly, then I think abortion would have been defeated, at least intellectually, long ago. But I was on television one night with a physicist and a housewife, and they ridiculed me for that argument. That's not what they want. Never mind what they want, is what they ought to want. We've got to teach them. So, putting this together with a false notion of right, it is claimed that homosexuals as such have rights. As men they have rights, but not as homosexuals. Prisoners have rights, but not as prisoners. If a man's put into prison because he's a thief, he doesn't have a right to be a thief. He has a right as a man. As we've been warned by the popes and others, to remember, treat homosexuals not as scum, although it might be very hard not to at times, to feel very irritated with them. When I was in pharmacy, I employed a man. There is a distinction. And I employed him, and a couple of physician friends that came in periodically said, you know, you want to get rid of that fellow, he's bad for your reputation. I was so busy I didn't realise, but they picked him. He was homosexual. Then I found he was helping himself to Dronamyl tablets and all these different ones that stimulate or do something else to a person. So, as a consequence, these false notions of rights and false understanding of human persons, others do not have a right to ban recognition of the practice of homosexuality and pornography. For man does not have obligations to society, according to these people. Anyway, this is contrary to distributive and legal justice. Well, we won't go into that now. So this distinction between what is arbitrary and what is natural, a very big, important, fundamental distinction. Yet somebody teaching in a university who teaches ethics and almost entirely teaching ethics, when I directed, who was it? Dr. Hayden, I think it was, directed her thesis. This gentleman said, what do you mean by that? I don't think I've ever heard of that. The distinction between the arbitrary and the natural. I had to explain it to him like I would to a young student. He'd been teaching ethics for probably 30 years. I wonder what kind of ethics it was. So, we get all these things. I wrote a little 7-page thing, is love the purpose of marriage? Is it the natural end of marriage? And this is in the book of study aids that I wrote for students. But it brings that point out, that from the distinction between what is natural and what is arbitrary. And you see, they deny this, the proper activity of the human intellect. The human intellect can grasp the natures of things. Even if only confusedly, at least it grasps the nature, and it unfolds it gradually with the various sciences. But an adequate understanding of human nature is necessary as the objective norm of ethics, of the whole moral order. Enormous amount of stuff comes from that. But you never hear it. Like one friend teaching ethics, this is how he taught it. Abortion, euthanasia, capital punishment. And he told me that he thinks a woman has a right to have an abortion to save her life. And I said, oh, wait a minute now. You're doing an immoral act to achieve a good end? That's against the fundamental principle. We ought to do good, seek good, and avoid evil, is the fundamental principle of ethics. So I said to him, you know, that's against the natural law, natural moral law. He said to me, what about you with capital punishment? Capital punishment equated to abortion? Holy jumping Jehoshaphat's and blowflies pantaloons, that's ridiculous. Even the blowflies wouldn't go for that. So I think I've said enough there, my friends, on that. Now, what did I do with that? There it is. What is it? Would you like some coffee? Not just a moment, thanks. I just had some. Now, a paper I have written that's never been published, I'd like to deal with. Since these are important things that are in the news, especially with the new president. From economic slavery to freedom. Mr. Venari thinks that's one of the most important papers, I think, if I interpret him correctly, that I've written.
Nobody knows about it.
No, that's it. It's never been published because I don't trust the publishers after a couple of bad experiences. So I'd like to run through some of that for you tonight. And if President Obama, with the Obama Nation, would see this, you know the joke, don't you? Abomination, it's an abomination. That's it's supposed to be the joke. So, Aristotle said, leisure is necessary both for the development of virtue and the performance of political duties, in his book called The Politics. First, the nature of capitalism. It's noteworthy that Pope Pius XI, in his encyclical, The Social Order, which is quoted extensively by those interested in this field, he avoided the use of the term altogether because it's such a confusing term. But there are two things hiding under the nature of this term, under the name of this term. Two things, two opposite things. Capitalism, I said to Helen Fowler, who won the Templeton Prize for her novel, The Refugee, which is a splendid novel. And she's Australian, but living in Great Britain. And she was very interested in the in Catholic social theory, etc. I said, but you've got to understand. She said, we're fed up with capitalism. Yes, but you've got to understand the nature of capitalism. What is it? You've got to understand it properly. Oh, we're fed up with that. She had no understanding of it at all. And she was quite a leader in some kind of social group there. We exchange goods and services for a return. We may use money, goods or services, and it's one of the most confusing terms in the English language, the term capitalism. But now we've got to understand, in society, there are four levels in society. There are different goods, different levels, four levels in the civil society, the political society. Let's run them through on the board now. Where's that eraser? I rang about the missing part of the board here, but they didn't return my call, so I've got to get after them again. There are four levels in human nature, therefore four levels in civil society. There's the vegetative order. This is man. Vegetative. There's the sensitive order. And there's the rational order. The vegetative order, we call that the body economic. The sensitive order, the body recreative. The rational order is at two levels, speculative and practical. The speculative order is the order in which we know for the sake of learning, know for the sake of knowing. The practical order is knowing for the sake of doing. So we call this, the practical order, the body politic. And the speculative order, we call that the body cultural. What is the body cultural? These days it means anything. The body cultural consists of all those goods belonging to the speculative order. Languages, sciences, studies of history, etc., etc. Not just operas, not just dancing, but all those things, higher goods, such as study of religion, for instance, the study of history, all those things, the goods which belong to the speculative intellect, not merely the practical. Now, each of those has, so here's the level of man, and here's the level of society. Now, each of those has a common good. The body economic has a common good called leisure. And one of my political science colleagues, when I was in Niagara University, said, well, wouldn't you say, like Aristotle does, that, do you call it riches? I think he called it wealth. Wealth is the common good of the body economic. No, I wouldn't say that. What have we got wealth for? To save us from work. We accumulate wealth so that we won't have to work. So leisure, we call that. And Aristotle called that. I don't know why he didn't read further on, he'd have discovered that. The body recreative, its common good is normal organic constitution, which is another name for health. The body politic, well, we know all the different common goods there. Civic friendship, peace, order, freedom, justice, and a healthy public opinion. So we haven't got that today. I'll run through them again since some of you are trying to keep up with me writing. First of all, there's the civic friendship, peace, order, freedom, justice, and something which is shattered all through this land and a lot of other lands. A sound public opinion, a good public opinion amongst the people. We'd have thrown abortion, euthanasia, and homosexuality out and drugs long ago. Young people are sheltering behind those things. They're not taught discipline. So there it is. This one has got civic friendship, etc. All those others. The body cultural. What's that got? It was one night reading Plato. It hit me. I'd never heard anybody say what it was before. If I did, I don't remember. Dr. Redpath at St. John's University thinks it's a beautiful thing I stumbled on. Namely, the contemplation of the beautiful. The contemplation of the beautiful. That's what the body cultural is about. And isn't that what man is supposed to achieve in the beatific vision after death? The contemplation of the beautiful? And Plato spoke one of the most beautiful passages ever written by pagan hand. I make sure my students in ethics gets a copy of this. He's talking about, we think about beautiful things, flowers and so on, all beautiful sights and sounds. And he said, of course, here he reveals part of the homosexuality of his time. Young boys, they find them beautiful too. And so he goes on, and the mind going up gradually till he comes to that ultimate thing. This is a pagan 400 years before Christ, talking about the beatific vision. That's what he's really talking about. If only he ends up with this beautiful passage with a cry of anguish. Wouldn't that be a wonderful life to live? Oh, if only mortal man may. It's a beautiful thing. That was 400 or 500 years before Christ. Socrates was the one who said it, and it was Plato who recorded it. That's one of the things Aristotle did not criticize him for. When you see that Aristotle, for instance, wrote about God as a thinking on a thinking, as Ross translates it. Woodbury translated it this way: God is the understand of an understand. He's not an understander, he's an understand, a pure act of understanding. Understanding his own act of understanding. Beautifully laid out. That was pagan Aristotle. In Book 9, Chapter 12 of his Metaphysics. You might remember when we studied metaphysics, we dealt with that. So there, my friends. Now, leisure. Why haven't we got more leisure? I'm going to reveal a few things to you of the past. You know that time when everybody was enslaved, if you read some of the rubbish that some men have written? It's rather surprising. This is the common good. And what is a common good? These are common goods. What is the common good? The good of the whole and the good of a part, each part. That's the common good. Yet somebody wrote, where was that? Just last week I saw it. somebody spoke somewhere, I don't know where it was now, who it was, and said about the public good is the supreme good of society. No, it's not. The public good is the good of the totality. The common good is the good of each person and the good of the whole. The good of the whole organisation, the society, and the good of each person. That's the common good. And it's got a number of properties. The more you produce, each person produces, the more we all gain. And by anybody taking it from or sharing in it, none lose anything. It's perfectly divisible, the common good. By each person contributing peace, we all benefit from it. And by everybody sharing in peace, nobody loses. And they're all immaterial things, common goods. Civic friendship, peace, order, freedom, justice, a well-informed public opinion, and so on. So these goods are worth going after. But there's something wrong. Today, leisure. There are people who can't earn their living in 7 days. Monday, we'll know whether GM has gone bankrupt or not. All over the world, men are struggling to earn their living. As for the poor souls who are single parents, and maybe it wasn't their fault, we wonder how they're able to live, earn their living. I remember my father coming home. He's an electrical contractor. And in a big factory where he was installing some machinery, electrical machinery, suddenly something came down. All he saw was the brains of a man from under the bell. A horrible sight, and he thought it was his own assistant. And I've seen men working in places like that. I went into a coal mine in Australia on one occasion, about 3/4 of a mile underground. There's very rich deposits of coal in Australia. And I think of the poor devils forced to work in that atmosphere all day long. And this was a highly mechanized one, by the way, very highly mechanized. But there are men out there trying to feed their kids. They get sick, but they'll still go to work. And mothers too, still go to work. So let's see how the body economic functions. Then we'll see the problem we've got. Then we'll see what's wrong and the solution. Some of this has been published in other papers, by the way. Let's say we've got Joe, our friend Joe. He grows potatoes. He grows spuds, Murphys, if you like. Then there's Bob. Bob makes boots. Bob finds he can't eat boots, and Joe finds he can't wear potatoes. So they decide to come together. Now, it's taken him a long time, a lot of development of his skill. Probably served an apprenticeship somewhere. I have thought over the years of having a bit of fun, just as a little hobby, and making myself a pair of shoes. But my feet looked at me and said, "Not in your life."
They threatened to walk out.
Somebody give him the watch and chain wheel or a clobber. But the potatoes now, they decided to come together. And he decided to give 2 bags of these. And for one, they decided between them 1 pair of this. They reckoned they'd put that just about that same effort into that. So they did an act of exchange. So what did he get? He got 1 pair. And what did he get? He got 2 bags. I read somewhere where a sheep went into a barber and said, "Would you just like a nice trim, or would you like the usual 2 bags full?" So, what did they get out of the act of exchange? Nothing. Really, they've just got back what they gave. Or have they? I should have put this one as Bill, because I have a friend who did this till he died. He was a market gardener with his own father. And he used to just love to see shoots coming through the soil. I've sat with him on a Saturday night till late, just when he was in the summer, but he was just waiting to turn the hoses this way or that way, and they were just in a small way, the father and son. But Bill, as a matter of fact, was a lay brother in the Passionist Fathers Monastery, which was near where I was. He got booted out. They couldn't trust him with the wine. He said, we'd go down there, we'd say, we better test this, two of the brothers, better test this and make sure it's good. What did each give the other? They got a free gift called leisure. That's what he got. Leisure. Now, Bob saved Joe a lot of time by giving him the benefits of his own productive ability, giving him a tremendous production ability. If Joe wanted to make boots, it'd take him a heck of a long time to get round to finishing so they could wear them. If Bob tried to grow potatoes, it'd be like the tomatoes I grew a couple of years back. Somebody planted them in my garden, and I reckon they came out beautifully. About $5 a tomato, I think it cost to produce them. The way, because they were terrible. I forgot to water them. So leisure. They've each saved the other time and effort. That's what we mean by leisure, as Aristotle defined it. Now, what about Mary? She makes shirts. What about Tom? By the way, I presented a paper on this at the American Catholic Philosophical Association of Western New York and what is it, Eastern Ontario? Pennsylvania or something. Anyway, one person said, I don't like what you put here today. I mean, that's all right for an agricultural economy. So now what I say is, Tom produces skyscrapers, and Joan produces battleships, and so on. The more people we've got, the more time we can save. The more people we've got, the more time we can save. That's why historians have found that the country that wins a battle is the one that has the best economic basis. The one that's got the good economic structure in its country. And they found that's what happened with Germany. Overlooked that there were more people who'd back Great Britain with the economic structure than the other. You know what, when Roosevelt said to Churchill, tell us what you want and we'll give it to you. Tanks a million, bud, he said. And they got tanks by the million. So the more people we've got, the more there should be more leisure. Now, it is possible, I wrote this in the middle of the Indian Ocean on the SS Strathmore in 1962, while coming from Greece to Australia. I wrote this, the more people we've got, the more leisure we should have. But why haven't we? Why haven't we? What's gone wrong? Something's wrong. In fact, we should have so much time in our hands that I called the paper, is a one-day working week possible? Of course, you always get the objections, especially from young students. What would you do with the rest of your time? I don't know what you could do. You can do what you like, but I know what I do. Got plenty of things to do. Haven't swept the kitchen for a week or two. But there are lots of things. We can explore the oceans. We can explore the universe. We can explore countries. Look at 1977. They explored the Simpson Desert in Australia, and went and found that there was people there that the local Aborigines called the shy people, the Bindaboos, they call them. And they found them there and had never heard of them before. But plenty of places to be explored, plenty of things to be determined. I've seen a friend of mine who was working with mining, and I think it was 1.5 miles from down in the earth, he showed me minerals that he'd got from down there. Tremendous, beautiful minerals. Well, there's plenty of stuff to be explored as far as I'm concerned. But then these people need education. There's another thing that can be done. I've said to students, wouldn't it be wonderful if instead of rushing this through in one semester, you could take the whole year? and study this course and enjoy it and discuss it and really make progress? Yes, it'd be wonderful, they said. So, what went wrong? Now, if we look back, I think I can put my hands on this. It should be noted that in the past, men had a lot more leisure than they have today. In the 13th century, 2.5 days a week was all that was necessary to earn one's living for oneself, a wife and family. 2.5 days. The best research ever done on this was by Professor Thorold Rogers, 6 Centuries of Work and Wages. I've got it, and it's a rare book. And Dr. Pierce at the Aquinas Academy has done a lot more research. In fact, it is said amongst some professional people that Australia is way ahead of any country on this politico-economic theory. So, yes, 1 day a week is all that, in my judgment, as I've drawn that conclusion, after examining what happened in the past and what should be happening today, 1 day a week. If we had enough people, but what's stopping it? There's something wrong. It's this interference, of the body economic. I forgot to erase that. Interference with the body economic. What precisely is done? That's what I'm going to look at now. If one wants to earn one's living, you can go about investing money, etc. And supposing now I wanted to make 3-headed teddy bears, put them on the market. And the students will say, what on earth would you do with 3-headed teddy bears? Well, you see, to give the honest truth, I'm a bit of a nut, and I like to produce silly things like that. And then you find they're selling. The first time I saw the what was it, the Cabbage Patch Doll, wasn't that what it was called, Ian? First time I saw them was in a store over in Ontario, and I walked in and I said, good God, there's a fit having a nightmare. What the heck is that? I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it. They had about 3 of them, a ma and pa and a child in the store there. But people bought them. Do you remember what they were doing in the 60s? They were sending to England to get them, and they were paying first-class fare to bring them to the United States with insurance and even provided a passport for them. At least they claimed it was a passport. But there are people willing to buy and do anything. So I will produce 3-headed teddy bears. And my good friend here, Ken, says, I'm going to produce 3-headed teddy bears. That idiot's making a lot of money there. I'm the idiot. Making a lot of money there by making 3-headed teddy bears. So I get to hear this, and I stop him somehow by buying up all of the materials we make them out of, or by buying the machinery, or refusing to let him buy the machinery. In some way, I interfere with what he's doing. So there are 2 ways you can earn your living: by investing to produce and by investing to stop production. Taxis. The government has put a monopoly on taxis by limiting them. People have said to me, but what's wrong with that? You don't want too many taxis. Well, what? They don't limit doctors, they don't limit chemists, pharmacists, they don't limit dentists, they don't limit men who dig for coal or something like that. They don't limit them. Why should they limit these people, the taxis? What was the latest figure he's not here tonight. What is the latest figure that Mr. Killian gave me in New York City? He gave it to me and published in the press somewhere. $600,000 for a taxi license in New York City. 600,000 is the latest value, or not value, I should say price they put on it for a taxi in New York City. When I was in Toronto, I think it was 200,000. I had a student who drove a taxi. I remember him sitting about where our good friend here is, and he said, oh, this is ridiculous. He said, you can buy them at City Hall. I said, good, hang on. I got my wallet out. I said, how many can you get for me? Well, how many do you want? Just a dozen will do for the moment. I never heard him speak up again. He found out they'd put a cap on them. There were none allowed. One of our friends, one of our colleagues at Niagara, said, does that mean I've got to get rid of my taxi license? He has a taxi license. No, it doesn't mean that. I've only saw that I haven't got one. But the thing is, The fact that it's a limited commodity like that is an artificial limitation is a very bad thing. So men invest in that to maintain a monopoly and to keep others out. They may not intend to keep them out, but the government has made it that way. I remember using the story that what if I started a taxi service downtown and I had a notice up taxi and the cop comes along and says, well, where's your license? The car's got a license. No, I mean, where's your license to be a taxi? All over the world, taxis seem to be limited. I wish they were in Paris. When I was in Paris, the most frightening thing I've ever driven amongst were taxis there. Cut across your bows without the flash of an eyelid. So there are two ways you can earn this. Aristotle wrote about this first. I can't find anybody else who seemed to have noticed that Aristotle spoke about this or didn't realise the importance of it. And then St. Thomas wrote about it. Aristotle was talking about Thales. Thales is the first official philosopher, the first one that's really given the name philosopher. And Thales was always thinking about new approaches in philosophy. He was the man that taught, for instance, that water is the essence of pretty well everything. And the people were laughing at him. All philosophers know what that's like. Oh, he's a philosopher. Like that very, very, very wealthy man from Nigeria that I was in a home with on one occasion. And he said, the philosopher, he's got his heads in the clouds all the time. That's the opinion that some people hold of a philosopher. Well, Thales was being laughed at, so he thought he'd better teach the people a lesson. He knew from observing the heavens, the stars, that there'd be a big bumper crop of olives coming up for this coming season. So he put a deposit on all the olive presses. And the people had to come to him to get the olive presses. And he raised the price a bit and taught them a lesson. He made a lot of money. Aristotle also speaks of another man, I think it was Melesius, if I remember correctly. He says that he put deposits on the iron mines, from the iron mines. He bought up all the iron. The people had to come to him for iron. There again, he doubled the price. It made a fortune overnight. Aristotle speaks of that. And St. Thomas speaks about it's all right for somebody to go to those cases, by the way, of Aristotle are in his book, The Politics. Then he speaks about I hope that's correct. Yes, I think it's The Politics again. But St. Thomas speaks about that it was all right for a man to go ahead to book seats or to buy tickets for the opera or whatever it is. It wasn't opera in his days, but it was the theatre, as he put it. It's all right for somebody to go ahead and make arrangements for the rest of the party coming. Like you can imagine Sister going to book at Art Park for us. She'd probably pocket half the money, but she'd call that coffee money. So, anyway, but he said when a man goes to profit from the others, that's gravely immoral. When he goes to take money from the people deliberately by putting a stop on the available seats. And so they have to come to him and raise the price. In Milan, I was going to the La Scala opera one occasion, and I remember 2 or 3 men came out. I was coming to the ticket box. There didn't seem to be anybody else there. When I got into the place, it was pretty full. I must have been running a bit late or something. And these 2 or 3 men stepped forward, and they, biglietta, signore? No, grazie. No, thank you, I said. I saw the girl's eyes behind in the wicket, what do they call it, the ticket box, and she was smiling, and I could see her, she knew that I was awake to them. But so I just ignored them. They were just, they call them scalpers, isn't it? Yeah. See, they're trying to cut in on the thing, and I got the tickets for half the price they were quoting me, because I looked like a silly foreigner, And the silly part was right, but as I say, 25% Italian blood in me, I think, somewhere. Not sure which arm it's in, but anyway, so this is what is possible. If we eliminated that interference with the body economic, it has been reckoned that we would possibly have 1 day a week work only. And the rest of us would find plenty to do. We'll take a break, and then I'm going to show you what was the holidays in the past. 150 public holidays, things like that. We'll have something to say about that.
That's it.
Please don't forget to sign in, please.